Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the NC State Insider Podcast. I'm your host and lead beat writer, Tucker Sennett, joining you here Sunday morning, just a few hours, it feels like, after NC State stunned the college football world and upset number 8 Georgia Tech. A massive win for the Wolfpack. They continue to be the disruptor of the ACC. And I wanted to provide, as I usually do for these home games, the sights and sounds from Carter Finley Stadium, give you a feel of what the stadium was like and the atmosphere and the environment from the game if you were watching at home or you missed things and you weren't able to catch the game and you're just trying to catch up and get a feel for what went down. I got you covered. This was an absolute shootout. 48-36, just an insane back and forth game, almost or over 80 points scored. You don't see that every night, but this NC State team knew that it was going to have to outscore one of the nation's best offenses to have a chance to pull off this upset. And these two teams combined for over 1,000 yards of offense, and it just the game moved fast. It never felt like it slowed down too much, and it felt like NC State was confident all the way through. There wasn't really that lull that they've had in past weeks where they start hot and then sort of have one bad drive that derails things. They didn't have that. They were 6 of 6 in the red zone, as was Georgia Tech, but NC State made some crucial stops in the red zone, forcing them to kick field goals and maintaining that two-possession lead. That was the key for me. NC State was able to just sort of cling to this extra cushion throughout the entire game. And I think if Georgia Tech was able to keep it closer, it might have been different. But NC State just kept going out there. They kept extending or maintaining that lead. And the story of the day was after weeks and weeks and weeks of begging his team to play complementary football, Dave Doran's Wolfpack finally went out there and stringed together a complete game. Yes, the defense allowed 36 points. However, Georgia Tech is led by a Heisman candidate quarterback. I don't care what you say. Haynes King is the real deal. This guy accounted for 500 total yards of offense. He threw for 400 yards, two touchdowns. He threw a pick to end the game. He ran for another 103 and scored twice. He was a monster throughout the entire game, trying to keep his team in it. Just didn't have enough at the end, and the defense really let him down. Brent Key was really disappointed in the effort of his team in the trenches. NC State was able to get pressure on King at times, which is something that they've really struggled with. They had let me tally it up, 2 sacks in the game. That was pretty impressive for an NC State team that's really struggled to get to the quarterback. And NC State's offensive line did a phenomenal job against a defensive line that's played pretty well at points of the season, not an elite group, but a solid performance overall by Georgia Tech in 2025. And this is the number 8 team in the country. They're going to have playmakers, and NC State's offensive line held up. They did a phenomenal job without Spike Souls in the lineup, with some different looks at the other guard spot, with Anthony Carter not going out there to start the game. Um, and they just hung together and did a good job. And maybe the most interesting story from the game was these game time decisions for Hollywood Smothers and Justin Jolie. There was obviously some gamesmanship there. I'm not totally certain that those guys were ever going to be able to play, but they were listed as questionable and then moved to game time decision 2 hours before the game. And then Justin Jolie came out in sweats, and Hollywood Smothers, kind of as late as possible, came out in sweats. And it was clear that it was going to be the Duke Scott show. The redshirt freshman running back was going to get his chance under the spotlight or under the bright lights and have a shot to make a name for himself in Wolfpack lore. And boy, did he do that. Scott was a wrecking ball all night, carried the ball 24 times for 196 yards, scored a touchdown, had a 69-yard carry, averaged close to 10 yards per carry, 8.2 on the night. a monster rushing performance for the young man, and just after having to sit for a full season, you could see the elation on his face at the end of the game, after in the press conference. You could just see how happy this kid was, and to see him get an opportunity was really, really rewarding for I think this NC State fan base, because Hollywood Smothers is probably going to finish as the ACC's leading rusher despite missing a game, which is pretty unbelievable. I would guess when he comes back, which I would assume out of the bye, they now have a bye week, he'll be back after that for that Miami game. And I think, they have a seriously bright future at the running back spot. And don't even get me started on the future of the quarterback spot. If they can keep CJ Bailey around, this is the CJ Bailey that Wolfpack fans have been waiting for. This guy went out there, he played 4 quarters of football for the first time all season. And I say that meaning he's had some bad showings late in games, even in games that they've won. He's struggled to keep the offense on the field or failed to complete passes. And this guy was out there, he was grinding. He made a couple huge third down conversions late in the game, and just kept his team in the fight. He completed 75% of his passes, got those numbers back up, threw for 340 yards, attacked down the field, attacked in the intermediates, was accurate, obviously, with that completion percentage, found ways to score, took off for that 119-yard touchdown, and just really put the team on his back when they needed it most, and proved that he was the leader that this team needed. And if NC State could find a way to wrangle him and keep him in Raleigh for another season, he's not draft eligible yet. This offense could take an even bigger step with the receiver talent that they'll have coming back next year. Teddy Hoffman also had a monster game, and the freshman receiver looks to be very, very, very capable after a sort of a rough stretch during that losing streak. And the future's bright. And I know, there was all this noise about Dave Doran maybe retiring and this program bottoming out. It's not like this team had lost 6 games already. This team was 500. They were in the midst of a brutal stretch in which they've lost, I believe, 9 of 22 of the two deep on the defense. They were without 2 offensive linemen against a rolling Pittsburgh team last week. And they came out and they fought for Dave Doran today. It's clear that he was able to motivate this team. He didn't quit on them and they didn't quit on him. And he came out, he had them ready to play, and they took down the number 8 team in the country. So I just think, and I've said this time and time again, there's no point in moving off of Dave Doran, or there wasn't any point in moving off of Dave Doran before this, because of the coaching carousel, because of the resources of the program. And they did this in front of a lot of big recruits last night. So I think there's a reason to have faith in this guy moving forward. You saw last night how wide open the ACC can be. And imagine if NC State wins a couple of those close games earlier in the season. If they somehow pull off that win over Virginia Tech, if they somehow hold on and don't have that interception against Duke to end the first half that kind of derailed the season for a while. If they are able to, go in there to Pitt and put more points on the board and make that a shootout, this could be a very different season. NC State could be in here with 2 losses on the board instead of 4. And now NC State's 1 win away from bowl eligibility with, a ranked matchup against Miami coming out of the bye in a couple weeks. That's going to be a difficult one as Miami is sort of fighting for its playoff life now, as they're out of the ACC hunt with those 2 conference losses. And after that, you get a Florida State team that's probably going to be fighting for bowl eligibility themselves. and you finish with Bill Belichick in North Carolina, which looks like a kind of reborn team. They look much, much better defensively. The offense is still pretty abysmal, but that's a team that could cause some frustration on the defensive end at least. But I think those last two games are certainly winnable. I think NC State's able to get one and play in the postseason here in 2025. Um, enjoy one of those holiday season bowls and maybe walk away with a bowl win and snap that losing streak. But this was a monster win. You had the field storming, which I'm sure Boo Corrigan wasn't thrilled about because now the athletic department's going to have to pay a hefty fine to the ACC for that. And they did not follow the field storming protocol. They were on the field before the game even ended, really. And it was really there was some magic in the air at Carter Finley Stadium. I certainly didn't see it coming, especially without Justin Jolie and Hollywood Smothers, but NC State had a perfect offensive game plan. They attacked Georgia Tech's weaknesses, and they just outlasted one of the best quarterbacks, one of the best offenses, one of the best teams in the nation, and did it in front of a home crowd on homecoming celebration Saturday, and really just silenced a lot of doubt, a lot of negativity about this team, about this program, and on a week where they really needed it. Dave Doran being asked about potentially retiring after the end of the season and calling the team last year one of the worst teams he's ever coached and that he hated coaching them. And there was so much negativity around this program, around Dave Doran, and for him to come out and win this game and silence that negativity and go into the bye week and give these guys some relaxation and get some of these defensive players healthy. It's such a massive win beyond just the record. It's a massive cultural win. You proved your culture. You proved that you can hang with the cream of the crop. And now you've beaten, as I said earlier, two of the teams that will probably be playing for the ACC championship. You beat Georgia Tech. You beat Virginia in that non-conference game, and I know Virginia is still undefeated in the ACC. So that's a really interesting thing going there because that NC State win doesn't matter. And as for the ACC, it's now looking like a one bid league after looking like, this could be a conference that sends two teams to the playoff for so much of the year. This Miami collapse is really interesting, and obviously CJ Bailey is going to get to go down there and play in front of a crowd of his peers and his family, which he said last night is really meaningful for him, and he needs guys to step up around him in order for him to go down there and prove that school wrong for letting him walk away and go play here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And, he'd love nothing more than to stick it to Miami. And there might be some other motivations for that game, but I'm not going to speculate on that, especially after a massive win. Um, but yeah, that's going to be a huge game. And the ACC, obviously, NC State is out of the hunt, which is, I'm sure, disappointing to a lot of Wolfpack fans after you beat the number 8 team in the nation and a team that was undefeated in conference play. But this conference is as wide open now on a year-to-year basis as it's ever been. And that's just the truth. You don't have Clemson anymore. Florida State's clearly not a power like it once was. SMU won the regular season title last year, and Clemson beat them on a last second field goal. So anything can happen in this conference, and that's just going to be the norm moving forward. This is college football in 2025. It's chaos, and there's going to be teams that win the ACC from year to year, and teams that are trying to defend their title that fall on their face. Look at Clemson this year. It's a disaster. So, you know, I think this NC State program, if it can keep some of this talent after a win like this, which I think a win like this goes a long way because you proved you can be at the top of this conference. You can compete with anybody with this win. And if they can keep some of these guys together, give them another year, the sky's the limit for this program. I truly believe that. At least in the ACC. I'm not saying that this team can compete for a national championship, but I truly do think that if you are able to keep this core, which is going to be really hard, given how these guys have played and the NIL resources that the program has. But if you can find ways to convince these guys to stay, it could be a really, really strong 2026 campaign for this team. But for now, NC State fans can sit back and enjoy a pretty unbelievable win over a really talented offensive football team with some deficiencies on the defensive end. And the fact that their sophomore quarterback who lost to this team on a night where he threw a few interceptions a season ago in Bobby Dodd Stadium went out there and threw for 340 yards and two touchdowns and outclassed a Heisman Trophy candidate on a cool Saturday night in Raleigh. And I'll leave you with that. As always, if you want more of my content, go ahead and hit my social media feed at Senate Tucker on X. You can find the website's social media feed at Wolfpack on SI, also on X. You can also find the Facebook page for the site, uh, NC State on SI on Facebook. And then, of course, if you want daily episodes of the sports videos on SI or of the NC State Insider podcast, subscribe to the sports videos on SI YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in, y'all, and we'll see you tomorrow for some more NC State basketball content as the season is here. The Wolfpack tips off against NC Central at the Lenovo Center tomorrow. The Red Reckoning has arrived, and Will Wade will officially debut with the 2025-2026 version of Wolfpack basketball. We'll catch you later, and hope you enjoy your Sunday.